Do 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 dun 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 dun. Astrology is now. And here we go. Welcome, my beautiful brothers and sisters, fellow radiators of love, to Astro Fenixx, flying into the moment yet again and radiating love as always. And welcome to episode 8 of the Astrology is Now podcast. I did miss the podcast last week, but things happen. It's okay. It was my birthday week. And it's funny because I never actually understood the whole concept of a birthday week. I would hear people talk about this, and I'm like, come on, guys, really? Birthday week? But for me, it actually was a birthday week because my wife actually she had a little gift for me every single day of the week leading up to my birthday. So it was actually a birthday week. My birthday was this past Sunday. My technical solar return happened like in the middle of the night going into Sunday, like so early Sunday morning. But yes, it was a nice week, and I just I really did feel the love and certainly appreciate all who wished me a happy birthday, a happy solar return. And yeah, I'm 28 now, and 28 doesn't really feel much different than 27, except for the fact that my Saturn return is right around the corner. We're going to talk a little bit about Saturn. We're going to talk a little bit about a lot of things in this podcast. We're going to talk about Saturn. We're going to talk about Mercury. We're going to talk about Mars. We're going to talk about Jupiter. We're just going to talk about this astrology and what's going on, building up to this 2020 portal. Oh my goodness, guys. I know you guys can feel it. It's getting intense if it isn't already intense. You feel it. I feel it. Let's go. So, all right, guys. Here we are. It is November 19th, 2019, 11/19/19. And I want to say the moon is actually in Virgo right now. I have to like pull it up to see if it actually is in Virgo. And I don't this is weird, guys. Like I had Google Chrome on my computer and I can't find it anymore. Like this happened yesterday and I re-downloaded it and I'm looking back on my computer and I can't find it. Like I don't know what's going on with my computer. It's so weird that it's not there. So, but just for the purposes of this, I'm not gonna bother trying to go, oh, here's how to finish installing Chrome. I thought I already did this. I thought I already did this crap. Whatever. I'm just gonna go to Planet Watcher just so I can see where the moon is at the current moment. So I want to say it's actually in Virgo right now. Let's see. Oh wow, would you look at that? Just as by the time that you guys see this, the moon will be in Virgo. By the time of me recording this, the moon is literally at 29 degrees of Leo, 59 solar minutes. I would show you guys this, but I'm not live streaming it, so you have to just take my word for it. But like, what? I mean, it's got to be literally in the next minute or so, it's going to shift into Virgo. I mean, within a few minutes of each other. Yeah, literally within the next few minutes, it's going to shift into Virgo. So that's kind of interesting. That's kind of interesting that I actually happened to catch it right at this moment, where Leo is literally here. The moon is literally here just now shifting into Virgo, and it's going to end up sextiling over to Mars, which Mars just moved in to Scorpio. We also have Mercury retrograde at 11 degrees of Scorpio, which is going to be going direct tomorrow. We have the sun making a shift this week. We also have Jupiter on the galactic center point. So there are a lot of shifts going on right now. I'm sure that you can feel it, but you probably are trying to figure out how to articulate it. What the heck is going on here? What the heck is going on? Right? So what's interesting about this is that, leading up to this energy, the past few days we've had the moon in Leo. The moon entered into Leo on my birthday, actually, November 17th. It spent the time there on Sunday for, the second half of the day, all day Monday, and most of the day on Tuesday. So with the moon being in Leo during this time, it actually did make a trine over to Chiron in Aries, but it also trined over to Venus and Jupiter. In fact, if I just take this forward, it trined over to Jupiter today, earlier today actually, just as Jupiter was coming over the galactic center. So Jupiter right now is at 27 degrees of Sagittarius, which is where the galactic center point is. If you don't know what the galactic center point is, think of it as the way that Christopher Witecki said, I think was beautiful. It's like the birth canal of the Milky Way galaxy. And it sort of represents our collective story in many ways, on our collective consciousness. So Jupiter, the planet of expansion, fortune, good luck, and in many ways experiences, expansion in many ways, although Jupiter does contract as well, but expansion is now over this galactic center point, and it'll be here for the next 5 days, which means that as a collective, we are going through a massive expansion, and we're making decisions that are going to last it's going to last a lifetime, but more specifically, it's going to last the next 12 years, because Jupiter won't be back in this spot for another 12 years or so. Venus is also here in Sagittarius. So what's interesting about this is that I think it's beautiful how Jupiter officially came to this degree of 27 degrees of Sagittarius, where the galactic center point is, while the moon was in Leo trining it, which lets me know is that the moon being our emotions, the way that we're reacting and responding to things, means that we are reacting and responding to that which is in our heart, that which allows us to shine. That is like how we shine in many ways, the gifts that we give to this world, our passions, our creativity. And with that trine over to Jupiter, this is a miracle. This is why I like to think of trine as miracles, or just sort of like these great epiphanies that can really lead to some quite impressive adventures. So with the moon in Leo trining over to this spot, there is some sort of action that we all have taken over the past couple of days as it relates to not only our story, but the story of the collective. And this is important because the galactic center point officially moved to 27 degrees of Sagittarius. Guess when? 2012. That was the 2012 shift. The 2012 shift was when the galactic center point moved to 27 degrees of Sagittarius. And this is important because now there is this focus on action. There's this focus on action because 27 reduces to 9, which is the last number, if you really think about it, because after that, it's just putting other numbers together. There's no other number truly after 9. Not really, because a 10 is just a 1 and a 0, but it does in many ways signify action. It is ruled by Martian energy. It is ruled by Aries energy, but it is sort of this last energy. It's sort of like this humanitarian energy too. It carries that vibration, but also carries the vibration of the 2 and the 7. The 2 correlating to the moon, and the 7 correlating to Neptune. So when you bring the moon and Neptune together, it's like reacting and responding to your own dreams, your own illusions and delusions and fantasies, your own spirit, your own belief, and then taking action on it. The fact that we had this major shift, and now Jupiter is moving over this spot. This is the first time that Jupiter has crossed this spot since the galactic center point has shifted to 27 degrees. Because if we take it back to 2012, just right quick, if we look at that shift, Jupiter at that time was in Gemini, so it was actually opposed that spot. More specifically, it was at 8 degrees of Gemini, Jupiter was, which ironically is creating a finger of God. I'm not surprised by this at all. It's actually creating a finger of God because you have Pluto at 8 degrees of Capricorn. You had Saturn at 8 degrees of Scorpio at the time, and you had Jupiter at 8 degrees of Gemini at the time, which was actually opposed Venus too, because Venus was here at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So you had a really true, like, authentic finger of God. And just looking at this chart, this is kind of incredible. You have Jupiter at 8 degrees, 8 meaning correlating to the Saturn vibe, so having to deal with karma. Pluto was at 8 degrees. Saturn was at 8 degrees. Mars was at 26 degrees of Capricorn. 2 plus 6 equals 8. And the moon also went over the 17th degree of Aries on that day. 1 plus 7 equals 8. So 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. There's a lot of... So this is correlating, it is correlating to a huge destiny moment and a huge fated moment, but also signaling just how infinite we really are, because if you look at the 8, it always comes back on itself. It's similar to the 0. It's similar to the 0 where it does... That's my phone. I don't know why I left the volume on, but it comes back on itself. So it does signify this sort of infinity. It is the infinity symbol if you turn it on its side. And what I like about the infinity symbol is that I feel like every time that it comes back to that center point, it delivers more power. It delivers like a spark. So there was certainly a spark that went off in all of us on this shift, on the fated, on the the Mayan shift. The Mayans had predicted this, that there was going to be a shift, and this was the shift in our consciousness, where we made a decision as a collective to move forward in a new direction. This is going to be the week where Jupiter going over this 27th degree of Sagittarius is really going to be the first seeds of action in this new world. The first seeds of action in this new world. And that's a big fucking deal. It's a big fucking deal. And, it can sound a little daunting too, because it's like, wow, so my actions are really that important. And yes and no, they are important. But I think a lot of time, I think what's great is that Jupiter being here in Gemini, even though Jupiter doesn't like to be in Gemini or much rather be in Sag, Jupiter in Gemini Jupiter at that point is getting the opinions of the people. When Jupiter is in Sag, he's at home, he's kind of sitting up on the throne, he's having a good time, he's throwing a party with all the other gods and goddesses. But when Jupiter is in Gemini, he's actually going out into the public and to the commonplace and the common folk, and he's kind of intermingling with them. And yes, they may not all have grandiose ideas like Jupiter does. They may not have grandiose beliefs like Jupiter has, or have the vision of Jupiter, but it allows Jupiter to kind of go about the populace, to go about the people, and to see what the people are really thinking. What kind of vision do they have? What are their beliefs? How do they structure their life around these beliefs? So, Jupiter in Gemini is not bad. I can almost see it as, think of like a millionaire CEO or something like that, actually traveling around to different locations and like applying for entry-level positions within their company, and the people don't even know that he's the CEO. That's kind of what this shift was. So now that Jupiter is back home in Sagittarius, going over this galactic center point, and Venus will meet up there soon. This is a major moment this week. This is a major moment. We are setting the seeds of these new actions and this new way of being, a new way of moving forward, and it is going to affect each and every one of us. And yes, and the thing about it is that, like, Jupiter being in Gemini during that shift, it was a way of sort of gathering information on the people and the collective and the quote unquote common folk, but also it was showing that you can be in certain positions but still be able to connect with other people. So it sort of carries a sort of why so serious kind of energy. And it's nothing wrong with being serious about stuff. To get serious about our path, to get serious about our creativity and our passions, whatever like that. But there's also this element where with the moon being in Leo, reminding us during this time as Jupiter came onto this galactic center point to stay in our heart, to remember what it was that kind of sparked our creativity as a child, to remember our joy, to remember our passions, to remember our heart, to remember love. If the moon was in Virgo while this shift had happened, I mean, we'd be certainly a lot more serious and be a lot more obsessed over the particulars. We will be a lot more meticulous about the details of these actions. But with the moon being in Leo, there is more of this, even though it's fixed fire, so it's kind of interesting. But there's more of this allowance of, kind of just, having fun with it. I'm not saying that Virgos don't have fun. I'm not saying that Virgos certainly can have fun. But the moon being Leo, it was important for allowing us to. It's almost sort of like whenever the moon goes into Leo, because Leo is ruled by the sun. So whenever the moon goes into Leo, it's sort of like this collective new moon, even if the sun's not actually in Leo. But it is sort of, it does carry the essence of a new moon. So it carries the essence of a new beginning. That's what this is. So the fact that we had the moon transiting Leo at the time of Jupiter going onto the 27th degree of Sagittarius means that the new day is officially here. It is officially here. And this was that week. And it seems kind of crazy too, but this was that week. And we're going to start to see this begin to manifest as we move into 2020, as Pluto and Saturn come together. Now, I want to segue actually to that. I want to segue to Saturn. Because, as I said, I had my birthday recently, right? And I think for me, what's been happening is there's this sort of angst and worry and anxiety about the Saturn return. And I know I'm going to be fine. I know there'll be challenges and stuff and karma that will come up that I have to deal with, just like anyone that goes to the Saturn return. But I know I'll be okay. I really do. I do feel like those who are getting their Saturn return right now in Capricorn, like, you are getting hit hard. But you guys, a lot of you guys are handling it with, and maybe behind closed doors, it may not seem like it, but honestly, it seems like you guys are handling it with grace. Like, and for that, I applaud you guys. Like, you guys seem to be handling it with so much grace, especially considering the fact that Pluto and the South Node are there. Like, that's crazy in a sense. So I feel like you guys are really going to help those of us who have Saturn in Aquarius to get through their Saturn returns. But the Saturn return is kind of like a midterm. I think for a lot of people, it is like a midterm. Why do I say that? It's this big test point. It happens every 29 to 30 years. So you get your first Saturn return in your late 20s. Then you get your second Saturn return when you're about 59, 60 years old. Then you get your third Saturn return when you're about 89, 90 years old. Now, a lot of people make it to 89, 90. A lot of people don't, but I like to think of it almost as like the first Saturn return is sort of like a midterm. And there's a lot of cramming and studying that has to go on before going into that midterm. So right now, I'm studying. But I almost feel like there's no amount of study that can prepare you for this sort of test. And I feel like this test isn't necessarily a pass or fail. I think it's one of those tests where you answer as many questions as you can and you get like a score. So it's like, there can be like, an exceeds expectations range. There can be a above average range. There can be an average range score. There can be a below average range score, and there can be like a poor score. I don't think there's necessarily a pass or fail. I don't think the Saturn there's necessarily a pass or fail. I don't think it's that black or white. I think it's more of like a range. So right now, if you're getting your Saturn return, you're kind of getting tested. And the thing is that you don't really know what score you get, I feel, until like several years after. I would almost say that you don't really know what score you get on your Saturn return midterm until Saturn is at least sextiling your natal Saturn. Because then particular opportunities begin to pop up more. That's what I feel. Based off of the decisions and the actions that you've taken during your Saturn return, by the time that Saturn is sextiling your Saturn, when it's progressed forward, that's when you kind of get to know what range. So for those of you who are in your Saturn return and are freaking out about it, I would say don't. And this is coming from someone who hasn't gotten their Saturn return yet. I would say don't freak out about it. Just do the best you can. For those of you who are awaiting your Saturn return, there's no really amount of studying and worrying that's going to give us the kind of solace that we need. You know, Saturn can be rather harsh, but Saturn still wants to help us out. So, you know, like I said, right now, like the first Saturn return is like a midterm. The second Saturn return is like a sort of like a final exam. And then if you do make it to the third Saturn return, if you do make it to your 89 and your 90, that's sort of like an overall review. And I don't even think it's not as intense as the midterm, and it's probably not as intense as the final exam. It's just sort of like a recap of what's happened, you know, in your life, in the tests and the quizzes and stuff like that. I almost want to say that the first one is probably the most important. I would almost like to say that. But it is a midterm, if you think about it like that. But like I said, you don't know if you get a pass or fail until several years after the Saturn return has even occurred. So for those of you right now, we can just look at it. Saturn's in Capricorn. You guys aren't really going to know, the first of you guys won't even really begin to know how you did on it until 2023. So you got about 4 years until you know how you did on your Saturn return. That's just the beginning part, because that's when like Saturn's going to actually enter into Pisces. I think it's going to be 2024. Let's see. It's like, let me go back like a few months. It might actually be 2023 when you guys begin to start to come into that, because see, Saturn, give me 1 second here, guys. Just want to make sure I give you guys the right information, you know. I want to make sure you guys are good. I want to make sure y'all are good. But it looks like essentially it's not going to happen until 2023, when the first of you really begin to see. So Saturn's going to retrograde at that point too. It's going to be retrograde in 2023, so it's almost going to be even earlier than that. But pretty much it's looking like it's going to be at the beginning of 2023. Let me just do that and see what happens. Okay, so on March 1st, 2023, Saturn will be at 29 degrees of Aquarius. And it's looking pretty much by March 10th or so. Yeah, by about March 7th or so, that's when Saturn's going to officially enter into Pisces. So for those of you who have Saturn at 0 degrees of Capricorn and you got your Saturn return rather early, that's when you're going to start to see the results in. You're probably not going to actually get the full results into that midterm until it's at least 10 degrees past where that spot is. So just be real. So beginning in 2023, those of you who are getting your Saturn return right now, that's when you're going to start to see the scores of that midterm. But like I said, right now, Saturn is at 16 degrees of Capricorn. It's getting closer to Pluto. So this is a huge major moment. And of course, they are going to conjunct at 22 degrees of Capricorn on January 12th. And that's going to be a huge shift. You're going to see a lot of change on that day. Like, even if it's not, I feel like it will probably honestly be obvious, but even if it's not obvious, like, it's going to go down. Like, it's going down. Like, you can even just look at the day, January 12th. The moon's going to be in Leo. It's going to be obvious. The moon's going to be in Leo on that day when they conjunct. I mean, I literally have it right here where they're conjuncting pretty much at noon on that day, which is rather insane that they actually conjunct at that time. Pretty much at noon Eastern Standard Time, they're going to conjunct, and the moon will be in Leo. So whatever happens that day, it's going to be dramatic. It's going to be obvious. I don't think it really has a choice to be. Like, it's going to be obvious. It's going to be crazy. And we're preparing for that. But, it's okay. We're all in this together, and I believe that we all can get through anything. But this is one of those important weeks where we really are setting forth in motion a new world, a new way of being, and a new collective. And there can be, like I said, there can be some worries here. There can even be some fears that may creep in. I hesitate to use that word, but let's face it, we all have fears, which are false expectations appearing real. Sometimes those illusions can feel very, very, very fucking real, though, right? It's like life is an illusion, but it feels very fucking real, doesn't it? Does it not? You ever have a dream that feels like so freaking real, and then you woke up, and then it's just like, what happened? I felt like I was actually there. You wake up and you're back in like real life, quote unquote. Of course, you just wake up into another dream, essentially. But that's beside the point. This is a huge moment, guys. This is a major moment. And now with Mars in Scorpio, we are now going to start taking action from a more internal space. Because Mars, yes, was a traditional ruler of Scorpio, but it represents the feminine side of Mars. So it is action that is more perpetuated from the inside, more perpetuated from that inner space, from intuition. Whereas with Mars, it's more direct, it's more external. It's a little bit more forceful in that way. Mars going into Scorpio now, it's going to be more from an internal space. And what's interesting about this, of course, is that Mars will eventually conjunct over to Mercury. That's not going to be until, I think, next week or something like that. Not even. It's not even next week. It'll be in December when that happens. Not even. Because Mercury moves really, really fast. So Mars isn't really going to catch up to Mercury. Not until Mercury goes retrograde again. Because Mars is pretty much going to be trailing behind. That's what's interesting about this. It's because by the time that these planets are all going forward again, because they will all be going forward again, Venus will be leading the charge as far as the inner planets. Mercury would have caught up to the sun and passed the sun, and Mars will still be back in Sagittarius at the end of January next year. So even then, it's like these actions that we're going to be taking. There's going to be an element of subconscious to it, because our higher selves are going to be playing out through us. And I feel like, yes, we can be aware of certain actions, we can take conscious action, but there's still an element of us not really knowing what the fuck we're doing or what's going on. And that's okay. That's actually okay, too. That's actually okay. It's actually okay. It's actually okay to not really know what you're doing. It's actually okay to have a bunch of evidence and still not necessarily know what to do. But know that this is an important week as far as taking action and moving forward. And if anything, you really just want to recommit yourself back to your heart. You really want to recommit yourself back to, I say your heart, of course, but to that vibration of unconditional love for yourself. And that's something we're still all trying to figure out. I'm still trying to figure out unconditional love for myself, And it's not easy. I get down on myself. I get upset with myself, I was doing a weight loss challenge in the month of November, which seems very cruel to me, right? Because Thanksgiving's at the end of it, and it's my birthday month, right? But I decided to do it. And honestly, I know I failed hard. I also am doing this NaNoWriMo challenge. I haven't written in a couple of days, and I'm really fucking behind. That doesn't mean I'm not going to write anymore this month. I am. I don't know if I'm going to actually hit 50,000 words. But that's another thing where I took on the challenge and I didn't quite make it through. But I've also have made it farther than all the other years that I've done this. And that's what I'm happy about. At least I made progress. I may have not completed the this sort of goal, the sort of external goal of reaching 50,000 words. And I say external, but as far as the internal goal, I've written more than I've had before. And there have been more moments during this process, this NaNoWriMo, where I actually felt like I was a kid again writing, when I just got really super excited about it. and I got really passionate about it, and it just flowed, and I was invested in my characters. I was invested in the story, and it just went. And how pretty much what I would do is like I'll set a timer for myself. I'll set like a 15-minute timer or a 17-minute timer, and then it'll go off. And there are more than once I would be like, all right, I'm going to add more time to this because I'm just going with it. I'm just going to go with it. There are times where I will write past the alarm and like I wouldn't add time to it, but I'll just keep writing until, the thought just, it was completed and stuff like that. And, for me, that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing. I said with Mars going into Scorpio, a lot of these actions are going to be coming from a more hidden space, a little bit more cryptic, a little bit more mysterious to us. But the fact that Mars is coming into Scorpio during this Jupiter shifting onto the galactic center point and being here for the next 5 days or so is pretty freaking huge, especially with the sun going into Sagittarius, which is bringing in a whole new season and new energy, where now we have taken the energy from Scorpio and we're transmuting it and we're alchemizing it, and now we hit Sagittarius, which is a whole brand new adventure. It's a whole brand new adventure. And in many ways, it's going to recap this whole, because Jupiter went through this space. It's going to recap this whole, what was this Jupiter Sagittarius about? Because this Jupiter in Sagittarius happened post 2012. Because the last time it was there, the galactic center point wasn't. It hadn't shifted yet. And yes, it's like, oh well, Astro, it only shifted 1 degree. You gotta understand, especially with large planets, when large planets or large bodies or large energies shifts 1 degree, it's a huge freaking deal. It's a huge freaking deal. Because sometimes we like to think that one domino doesn't have a big effect, but it does. A lot of times one domino can have a huge role. And right now, this domino has a huge role. And no matter what we can do, we cannot stop all these dominoes from falling now. We've already have pushed the domino, and now the whole thing is just unfolding. And it might take a while for this whole domino structure thing to unfold. And I don't know if you guys have seen those videos, whatever like that, about people that create like these giant things with dominoes and how it creates like a picture and stuff. And it's really, really cool. And it's almost mesmerizing, right? So we're going into a very mesmerizing time right now, especially over the next 5 years. It's going to be a very mesmerizing time because it's almost going to be like we're sort of like in awe of what's going to be occurring and what's going to be happening. I've already spoken how this next 5 years are going to be sort of like a mini dark age. And mini dark age doesn't necessarily mean that, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it's just we're going to really see humanity's darkness. But through this darkness, there's going to be light that's going to pave the way for the new world. I really do believe this. And each and every one of us has it within us to do so. There are certain people in the world that may have chosen to just stay in that spot, to just stay where they are and to not progress and evolve. That's their choice. That's their contribution to the collective. And we have to respect it to some degree because there is evil out there in the world. Some of that evil does not want to change. Some of it doesn't want to change. Some of it doesn't want to change. But we're going to see a lot of darkness come up. It's going to be intense. And we're going to be mesmerized by it because it's almost really hard to believe that we are capable of some of these things or that other people are capable of these sort of things. Because when you hear things like we're all connected and we're all one, people don't want to be one with a killer. People don't want to be one with a child molester. People don't want to be one with their enemies. People don't want to be one with a felon. People don't want to be one with people that have a different political ideology than them. People don't want to be one with them. But tipping that one domino does affect all the other dominoes. Even a domino that's like way far down the line, it still affects them. So we each have an effect. And I think the important thing, especially that Jupiter being in Gemini during the galactic shift on 2012 was teaching us about how our actions do affect those in our direct vicinity. And that's what we need to focus on. That's what's important. If we can radiate light and love within our vicinity, and also appreciate our darkness, because darkness isn't bad. Darkness is a great teacher. It's probably the most ancient teacher, probably. But if we can radiate love in our own space and affect those in our direct vicinity, that will have a ripple effect. It will. And then you'll eventually see people and then you eventually get people who are affecting a lot of people. But it takes one person. It took one person to really believe in The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. It took one person to really believe in him, or a couple people in his everyday life or in his direct vicinity to really believe in him that he can do what he's done. And now look, he's influencing millions. It took one person to really acknowledge Tony Robbins or any of these people, any of these influential people, Oprah, Jay-Z, whatever, whether you believe in what they're doing, whether you totally vibe with them or whatever like that. Whether you totally resonate, golly, resonate is another word that's almost becoming toxic in this environment, right? But it took one person, not a domino that was so many different miles away. It took one person to really recognize it. I think what's interesting now, though, is that, with the internet, it can be someone who's really far away. It can be someone who may be a couple states away or even in another country, but that maybe watched one of your videos or something like that, or read one of your articles, and now they become one of your biggest supporters. And they almost sort of they encourage you to do it, but they act as a sort of accountability partner. I think we all need an accountability partner. We all need a couple of them, right? We all need a couple of them. But I do think it may be easier now to kind of connect with a quote unquote domino being, soul, another person that may be somewhere else on this map of dominoes. And it can be sort of in your direct vicinity. It's easier now. But traditionally, it was someone who was in your neighborhood, and maybe 100 people in your neighborhood didn't believe in you. But if one person did, that's all it took. And then you make it. You become successful. And then everyone else starts to pay attention and they notice, And yes, while you're in there, while you're wanting some attention or while you're wanting to radiate love, and some people may be closed off to that love, because you got to think about Mars and Scorpio is also about setting boundaries, and people are going to be setting boundaries while Mars is in Scorpio. You already kind of did it when the Sun was here, but now that Mars is here, you got to start taking action on it. Sun was more revealing the kind of boundaries that you should set. Mercury is rethinking these boundaries, of course, but now that Mars is here, and the fact that Mercury is going to be moving forward and Mars is not going to catch up to it, your mind's already made up on all these boundaries. You're just going to start taking action on them. Some people have decided to take action on setting certain boundaries that may actually be toxic. They may actually cut people out of their life that they don't need to cut out, but that's what they decided to do for this particular step in the journey, for this particular chapter in the journey. We have to honor and respect that, even if we don't necessarily agree with it. But we have to be willing and open to our own boundaries that we're setting. And we have to be like, you know what? Yeah, so what if these 100 people don't really believe in me, or these 1,000 people don't believe in me? There's this one person right here, this other person right here that really does. And that's really important. And if we can acknowledge the power of one. Now, there is power in numbers, but there is power in the one. I think a lot of times we feel like having 1,000 fans or 1 million subscribers is a big deal, and it's I don't even have 1,000 subscribers yet. It'd be kind of cool to get there. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm sure it will teach me certain lessons and everything like that. But sometimes we like to focus on we romanticize having that many followers and support and stuff like that. But sometimes the power of one is a lot more powerful than the power of 1,000, because that one probably knows a lot more about you than those 1,000 ever will. And I think we have to remember that. And I think that's what Jupiter is reminding us of. Being back in Sagittarius, opposing where it was during the 2012 shift. and reminding us of these relationships in our life, of these people that really do believe in us, these people that accept us when we were in our most humble states. Like, can you remember that whole thing I talked about with the CEO who decided to quote unquote demote himself and enter into an entry level position? I think there's like a show about that. I think there's actually like a reality TV show, but they actually became like a entry level employee in their own company, but no one knew about it. But then they see who really appreciates them on that level. Sure, he probably gets a bunch of people kissing up to him or her when he's on the top. But what happens when he goes down to the entry level position? What happens when he becomes one of the worker ants? What happens then? You really then get to see the quality of humanity shine through and see who really appreciates you. I honestly didn't know where exactly this was going. I really didn't, but I do feel like this is a pretty good ending point. But I am going to draw a quick card. I'm going to draw a card from my The Answer is Simple Oracle deck. I've used this deck many times. It's one of my favorite decks. And you guys aren't going to be able to see the card, but you have to just take my word for it. But the card that we have, no, let's keep shuffling a little bit more. The card that we have the card of Speak with Love. I cannot make this up. The card of Speak with Love. I'm going to end it right there. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Episode 8 of the Astrology Is Now podcast, which was, of course, brought to you and sponsored by the Moon in Leo shifting into Virgo. Integrity of the heart and how to really become your joy, to become your passion, to become unconditional love, to embody it and to be it. I love you all so much. Y'all take care. Have a blessed week, and I will see you all on the next video. And as always, my beautiful brothers and sisters, always remember to keep moving forward, to stay focused, and Yahoo! Smile often. But this is the outro for the Astrology Is Now podcast, hosted by yours truly, Astro Fenixx. I appreciate you all sharing this time and space with me, and I trust that this message resonates with you, and I trust that you have a beautiful rest of your day, evening, wherever you are in the world. Now go out there and be that badass spiritual being that you are and always have been and always will be. Peace!